Oops. I just pulled my webcam down. Does it still work? Just a second. Yeah, it still works. What up? And so the problems with dungeon cleaves and grinding. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this.
Greetings everyone, Melderon here. I hope you're all doing well. I hope the queues have lessened, and I sincerely hope that you're enjoying yourselves immensely in Classic Azeroth.
Nope.
I myself am having a ball. I've got my Shaman Melderon to level 28 as of the day of this recording, and I've met some amazing people along the way.
Okay, good.
I even had the pleasure of tanking RFC, SFK, and BFD. Needless to say, the ride has been fantastic thus far. However, despite all the good, there is something I would like to address that, at least to me, seems like it doesn't fit in the overall Classic experience.
Okay.
Now, I could be talking about layering here, but that has been promised to be removed in Phase 2, so we'll table that. No, I'm talking about dungeon cleaves, specifically 8 to 10 man raid cleaves.
Yep.
I'm sure by now you've probably heard that this type of dungeon grinding awards the highest XP gains per hour on average. Now, don't get me wrong. I love running dungeons, so much so that I regularly will do them more than once, even if I don't have all the quests. However, I do them to supplement my questing grind and to meet and help new people. What I'm talking about here is grinding dungeons the entire way to 60 using a raid group of 8 to 10 people, mostly mages, only breaking to vendor and train. Now, I'll be the last to dictate how people should enjoy their game. If this is fun to you, all power to you. But I do think we are missing something here. It isn't easy to put into words. Instead, I'll pose a question. How is this different from retail WoW? How is this different from mindlessly standing in Orgrimmar or Stormwind smacking the dungeon queue button over and over again? I honestly do not see the difference at all. Sure, there is likely a bit more strategy involved, but how?
So what he's saying is kind of true, right? And obviously the reason, so why is this happening, right? What I think is interesting about this conversation is that you can make the same argument for 5-mans too. So is 5-man dungeon grinding the same as retail? Because how is 10-man really different than a 5-man? And I don't know. I'm not really sure. For me personally, I think that they're kind of the same thing. So anyway, whenever I see people say this, I do kind of I see where they're coming from, but I also don't think this is a 10-man exclusive thing or anything like that. You know what I mean? And different as an experience. Well, it's not tuned for 10-man. So you think because it's faster, that makes it retail? Because if that's what people are saying, like if that's the difference to you, then okay. Because like to me, like the reason you're not doing it for the speed, right? You're doing it for the experience, and the experience in a 10-man is better. But if you have a good 5-man group, it's very comparable to a 10-man, or it was. So I don't really know how big of a difference this is. But I think really the reason why this has happened is you have a lot of people that play retail well, so they have things that they naturally do. And so it's like whenever they log into a game, what do? Well, I level up my character, and then after that, I do dungeons to grind up, and I get whatever gives me the fastest experience per hour. And that's just the way that it goes. And it's all about like kind of efficiency and maximizing time. And I think that's one of the biggest differences between like 2006 and 2019 is how to do those two things are much easier to understand.
How long does that last after memory takes over? Pulling the same packs over and over again. We fought for a long time to get this game in a near pure state, and now some of us want to circumvent one of the key aspects of the vanilla experience. Some of us want to rush through and partially ignore the leveling process, one of Classic's most unique systems. Literally a key aspect of what separates Classic from retail. Personally, I don't get it, but let me make this clear. I'm not asking Blizzard to change it. That isn't my place. And in fact, in vanilla, for a time after launch, you can have 40 people in every dungeon. So some may argue this is actually more vanilla-like, and that's a fair point. However, I do plead that at least you think about the ramifications of this type of gameplay. Is this the kind of experience we wanted? I totally understand that the path of least resistance is very attractive to a lot of people.
And that's what it is, right? And like somebody in chat said that, why does he care how other people play the game? Well, it's a very big difference. So like to me, I think it's a matter of impact. So the dungeon finder, like I don't really care if one person is botting. It doesn't matter, like because it's an isolated event. And who cares if one person is botting or one person bought their account? The issue is that once you see one person botting, The next day you see 2 people botting. The next day you see 5 people botting. Then 15 people the next day. Then 30 people the next day. Then 100 people the next day. And then before you know it, everybody's botting, the economy is ruined, and things are completely fucked up. So I think that you can advocate for things that you feel are healthy for the game as a whole without necessarily being accused as, trying to moderate what other people are doing, right? Am I dead? God, guys, this is just really so fun. Okay, so anyway, let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much what I was trying to say. Is that there's mainly guilds that dungeon grind for pre-raid? Well, of course they are, right? And I think that many of these guilds that have done that have probably leveled to 60 many times. So to them, it's not really about the experience because they've already had that dozens of times. But in general, what this guy is saying, I do kind of agree with. And I do think that it's an important point to look at different metas like this and see how these metas are healthy or unhealthy for the community as a whole. It's not about what an individual player does, but it's about what the community's trends are and what becomes an expectation, if that makes sense.
To endgame is important. However, I believe that grinding dungeons and not experiencing the world is antithetical to the classic WoW experience. Before I leave you, I will discuss a few things that I think will drive the point home. Dungeon grinding just trivializes the content. Dungeons, in my opinion, are supposed to be a challenge and take a significant amount of time. They are a place to chat, discuss strategy, and learn your class. How can you do that if you're just using a limited set of abilities? When that blue piece of gear drops and you win that roll, that should be a moment you remember, not just another piece of loot on your 7th dungeon farm. And perhaps even worse, if the content is trivial and you are speeding through it, there's no need to chat and make new friends. I seem to remember a lot of us complaining that the issue with retail was that no one talks in dungeons. Right, so let's create an environment where that happens in Classic. I don't get it. Finally,
I think it's very simple. What he's saying is very, very simple, right? And quests I don't think are really challenging either. I think that like what he's saying, like to an extent it's true, but also everything that I feel like whenever you're criticizing anything in terms of like what really is the classic experience, everybody has a different idea of that. But in general, I agree with what he's saying, even though I don't think that it's anybody's place to tell other people how they should play. I think that it's only our place to ask Blizzard to change the game in a way that makes certain types of gameplay not as important, right? And I think that's the only thing, or certain types of add-ons, right? I don't really ever, focus on the players. I focus on Blizzard, because I think players are always going to focus and try to trend towards whatever is the path of least resistance. And what he's saying here is completely true.
how will you meet new people if you continue to group with the same 7 to 8 players over and over again? Part of Classic WoW is making new friends with people you've never met before. I spent 40 hours compiling a video called 2019, A World of Warcraft Classic Odyssey, as a hype trailer for the launch of Classic WoW. While making that video, I just could not believe how beautiful and massive Classic Azeroth is, even after playing it for so many years. The amount of work that went into the questing system, the zones, the NPCs, it is just astounding. Why would you, on purpose, limit your experience to this masterpiece by staying in dungeons? And of course, dungeons are part of that beauty, but how can you actually enjoy it, grouping up mobs and AoEing them down, over and over again?
The reason why they enjoy it is very simple, right? And I think it's very, very simple. It's because basically they feel like they are saving time. And because they feel like they are, saving time doing dungeons, because they are in-game oriented players, they feel like they're saving time in the dungeons, and then they're not having as much fun doing quests because they feel like they're handicapping themselves or slowing themselves down. And I think it's really kind of hard to say, you know what, I want to go ahead and take my time and take it easy whenever all of your other friends want to play the game a different way. And especially whenever that other way happens to be the best way to level. That's the issue. Link the video so I can talk shit on it? No. Like, what do you mean talk shit on it? Like, no, what he's saying is true. I think this guy, this guy has made really, really good videos for Classic WoW for years now. You know what I mean? And there's no reason to shit on him for any reason. Even if he has a different opinion than you, why shit on him? Just explain why you feel differently. I mean, come on.
We fought to bring the pre-Cataclysm Classic world, with all of its depth and beauty, back from the brink of extinction. Why ignore it? My last point will be important to most of you, but not all. However, those of you playing on PvE realms, let me ask you this. What would it be like if you didn't run into other players as often, whether they were on the same faction or the opposing faction? I'm assuming it would feel pretty weird and non-MMO-like. Now imagine that occurring in a PvP realm, where instead of seeing massive amounts of people running around, getting into countless PvP skirmishes, are dungeon grinding instead.
That's actually a really good point. And I think that regardless of like what you're saying about anything else, I think this is probably the strongest point that he has, is that whenever the dungeon grinding meta was like the meta, I would go around and I never saw anyone. Every questing zone was empty, and I thought we were in a different layer. Yeah, we're in a different layer, and our layer is not Scarlet Monastery or ZF, right? Like, we're going over an Ungoro Crater, and you remember at the beginning of the game, before everybody was doing these dungeons, there was people everywhere. We were competing with people everywhere for mobs, and like now, there's like nobody around because people are just running dungeons all the time. I think the main reason why this is the case, here's why I think that it's happening, is because people are really, really bad at doing the quests. They don't know what the efficient quests are. They feel like they're wasting their fucking time spending an hour on one quest that gives 3,000 experience, and they say, fuck it, I'm going to go to the dungeon and I'm going to grind mobs and I'm going to get gear at the same time. That's why it happens. I think more than anything, that's why it happens right there.
Huge part of the leveling process on a PvP server is engaging in world PvP, making the world feel dangerous and more real. If we spend all our time in dungeons, South Shore versus Terran Mill won't be as iconic. Those times where you get saved at the last second by a friendly heal won't happen as often. Nor will those times you're getting 2v1'd and a rogue pops out of stealth at the right moment to shift the chances in your favor. I realize that it may seem like a Debbie Downer here. Maybe I'm exaggerating the importance of this. If I am, then tell me I am. I honestly don't know, as I'm not privy to how many people are leveling this way. But I will stand by my point that this type of behavior, even if it's used by 5 to 10% of the players, results in 5 to 10% less in-world engagement. And, as it gets more popular, maybe even result in more. Are we okay with that as a community? Is this what we...
So I think that like being okay with it, right, the whole issue that I have, the main concern that I have with like this line of logic, and luckily this wasn't the case, but whenever you talk about wanting to have the game come back in the way that you remembered it, how can you make sure that, do you want it to be in the exact same way? And that's like the whole no changes thing. Because if the Tin Man dungeon grinding method was actually the way that Blizzard intended the game to work and the way that the game worked back in 2006, I don't think that it should have been removed, because the game should be the exact way that it used to be. And then as soon as you start doing that, then the reason why is because I think that's the first step towards creating the game towards an ideal that's not shared by everyone. So I feel like that's a big problem, because everybody has a different idea of what classic WoW really was. A lot of my friends did dungeons all the time. This is like Jeff, for example. Jeff never did quests because he couldn't read them or figure them out. So all he would do is do dungeons. Really. Like, that's all he would do. He'd do like maybe 3 quests on his own, and he couldn't figure the rest of them out. He did dungeons. Like, literally, like, you guys want to talk about like, oh, I don't know anybody that ever did that back in vanilla? I do. He lived right down the fucking street, and he did this all the time. And he was, hey, he got some pretty good gear out of there too, but I thought it was pretty boring as well. I'd rather do quests.
We fought for? All I ask is that you think about it. Thanks for watching. Keep on keybinding and grinding, and I hope to see you in Classic Azeroth.
Okay. Quick video. Not really a whole lot to it. So what did you guys think? Opinions? Thoughts and opinions. Let me see. I'll wait to see what people say. Casuals want the game to be fair for them. Blizzard gives them instant 60, so they're not far behind. I don't think anybody really wants an instant 60. Like, no reasonable person wants that. Let me go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and mute. I'm gonna go ahead and restart my my browser real quick. It's a little bit slow. I'm not getting my my chat responses as quick. Let's see. I feel like it's drinking water. How much you make for that? Entirely agree. Good video. I think people enjoy dungeons because they're easy to maintain overgeared stats as they level. That's also a really good point. I agree with you there too. Give me 1 second, guys. I gotta restart my my browser. So yeah. Anyway, like the way that I see this personally is that I agree with the essence of what he's saying, but I also think it's a dangerous precedent to set whenever you try to design and move content in a direction to reinforce kind of the way that you think the game should be, because everybody has a different way they think the game should be, and that's my main concern. Like, to me, it's like, I think one of the great things about a classic WoW or any of these other games is that they are complete, they're complete, what's the word for it? They're sandboxes. So if you want to play a game in one way, you can play the game in that way. Like, my friend Jeff would just, like, literally sit around, and whenever he couldn't get into a dungeon group, he would try to beg to have a high level run him through a dungeon. Oh shit, let me get in here. All right, we're good. Perfect. All right. That's why I was worried if I did the Mad Season video, it would take so long. So I figured I'd just do a short 5-minute one. Okay, so let me go ahead and re-invite everybody. O'Connell. Okay, let's see. Invite Roy. Okay, invite Cass. Okay, and who's the other person? Slowbo. Okay. All right, we've got everybody. Okay, boys, let's go ahead and zone in. Let's make this happen. I haven't done ZF for a while, and so we'll do a few dungeons. Hopefully get McConnell up to 48. After McConnell hits 48, let's go do ST. And McConnell might have a little bit of trouble like doing some of the mobs, but he's the healer, so it shouldn't be too big of an issue. I'm not too worried about it at all. Okay, give me 1 second here. Let me go ahead and close this, and we'll be good. I hate to detract from your WoW stream, but do you recommend PoE? Yeah, I love it. I think it's a great game. I'd totally recommend it. Wait, is this a multi-boxer? It is!